Hey everyone, welcome back to Inventing Construction. I'm Ross Griffin, and today we have Matthew Jackson. But before we introduce Matthew, I think we'll have a look at our topics. Our main topic is zero. You must be joking. I guess it's sustainability we're going to talk about today, but again, we'll come back to it. Subtopics: what is zero? Reaching 2050, if it's achievable or not, I'm not too sure. Greenwashing everywhere. We're becoming very familiar with this around the topic of sustainability in our industry, and advice to people out there when we talk about Zero, the company that Matthew works for, and when they are entering the realm of sustainability. But first of all, Matthew, perhaps you should introduce yourself.
Thank you. Well, thank you very much, Ross, for inviting me here today. Yeah, so Matthew Jackson, live in Sweden, but work here in Copenhagen. I have two jobs. My day job is I work for RIB Software as the global strategy lead. But my hobby job, my volunteer job, is co-founder of Zero Construct, which is a global community of very excited and energetic people into reducing carbon in construction.
Excellent. And we're going to dig into this zero. So it's a bit of tongue-in-cheek in the main topic, zero. You must be joking, but we are very serious actually when it comes to this. So this is great. And we met a couple of weeks back, and when this recording goes out, it'll be a couple of months back at Digital Construction Week, and it's very cool to see what you guys are doing. But let's jump into that first subtopic. What exactly is zero? Can you explain it for everybody listening?
So Zero Construct kind of came about as a response to, I think, general frustration. So a couple of people that I knew professionally started up through a little WhatsApp group during COVID, and I joined in and became a co-founder. We're a community of people where we wondered, well, if you have questions about reducing carbon in construction, where do you go? Where's your community? Where's your kind of your safe space to ask those questions? Like the simplest questions are like, where do I start? Yeah. The simplest of easiest of questions. So the community is now over 3,000 people strong. It's a global community, and the purpose is for us, we produce content. Yeah. But at the same time, we have this community who are going, hey, I tried to do this thing. Don't do that, or do this, or this kind of
experience has been that.
Well, yeah, and because as an industry, we're really not very good at sharing best practice. I mean, look at the digital journey, and kind of we're still struggling through that, to be perfectly fair. Yeah. And now we've got an even bigger challenge of carbon. And there are some really good examples of people doing the right thing and the wrong thing globally that we need to discuss better and kind of work as a community to solve.
And I think you made an interesting point there. We need to look at the good stuff, but we also need to look at the bad stuff. What didn't work? Why didn't it work? How can we learn from that in order to be able to improve what we're doing as an industry? And we can see it a lot in the business that we're working in, where companies have this global corporate strategy on sustainability, but the people on the ground have zero understanding of how to kind of implement that. And that's becoming a bit of a difficult challenge for them now, because they have these constraints and requirements they need to follow within their organization and within the industry.
I mean, and that's what I really like about working with the Zero community, is the vast majority of people are people that do stuff, right? And by that, I mean, they deliver projects, and whether they work on site, work in the site office, or they're in the office doing the design or the delivery. These are real people finding real solutions. And so a lot of these companies have these targets, but they look at it and go, so, target could be, reduce 50% of carbon by 2030, this big ethereal sort of target. But where do you even start? And it's a bit of this management consultant approach, this big roadmap target. And it's like, but that's not very useful on the tomorrow thing. Yeah. What can you do?
What do you do
tomorrow?
Yeah. And reducing it by 30, 50% from what baseline are we actually talking about here?
Well, even knowing what the baseline is that first challenge. Yeah. I mean,
and it seems to be a little bit of the horse before the cart in sense of we're setting these huge, ambitious targets, but we're not understanding what our starting point is yet. And saying 30, 50, 80%, for example, could be possible, but also might not be possible. You might be in an organization that's actually quite sustainable already, potentially speaking.
I mean, we've got one of the parts of Zero, we've got this Zero Next part, which is our kind of our future leadership group. And they described it really, really well, which is we kind of know where our starting position is. We have an understanding of where our end point is. And if you think about it as sat nav or kind of a map, the middle is just black. It's not even a maze.
No.
It's just
there's no
black.
road.
There is nothing there. It's more just like, good luck. Lights are off. Just go for a walk and see where you end up. And they have Digital Construction Week last year or year before. The Zero Next group made this bold statement. It was the F word, roadmaps in bright pink and yellow letters.
Yeah, I've seen that. It's very good.
And it was a good clickbaity thing to do, for sure. But the point is that it's not that we don't agree with roadmaps. We absolutely do. You need to have some kind of path. But setting a roadmap and going, done, it's not a good approach. We work in an extremely complex industry, extremely broad, extremely skilled, very smart people. But we all need to kind of understand where that starting point is and what those first steps are. So zero is a response to that. What are the first steps and how can you navigate this very, very complicated blackness, shall we say?
And do you feel that from your time with Zero and the connectivity you have with kind of other global organizations and other countries, are we all at the same level of understanding at the moment, or are there organizations and countries that are more progressed than others?
I mean, right now we're in Denmark, and it's not because I'm here and I'm favourable, but really the Danes and the Scandinavians more broadly are definitely the furthest ahead. Yeah. Of course, there's pockets of projects that you can look at globally all over the world, but it's also because here we have legislation. Yeah. So we're the furthest ahead. So then it's like, well, how do we get people who are doing really good work? How can they share? If they want to share, like the other unfortunate side to this is there is a capitalist competitiveness as well to this market where some people are keeping their cards really close to their chest. And that's we can't argue with that. That's just life. We have to deal with that.
It's part of the industry in reality. Like the lack of transparency in our industry goes way back. And even if you look at how our contractual relationships are set up between stakeholders, they're set up to be non-transparent,
absolutely
non-collaborative, non-open, and if we have to achieve what we need to achieve in the next, 15, 20 years, all of that needs to change with it. Otherwise, we're not going to be able to achieve what it is we set out in reality. So I think maybe for the first time, along with digitization, sustainability is now driving the need for full transparency here in our construction activity, the processes that we work in and how we deliver information.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, if we had a really interesting debate, you said we saw each other at DCW, which was only 2 weeks whenever this is going out. It could be 3 or 4 months ago. And we ran a panel as part of Zero. We had 2 of our future leaders come in and we asked the question, are standards too complicated? And I'm part of Building Smart and I fully support standards and the people that work really hard. But we've had IFC for 27 years. We've had LEED and BREEAM for a good 2 decades as well, I think. Yeah. That need to make those things happen through data has always been kind of a nice to have, to be fair. Yeah. But now we've got all these kind of carbon legislations coming in that nice to have has moved to okay, guys, you need to go fix this now.
Must now. Yeah.
So it's also accelerating the digitization part because we need to measure everything. Yeah, to get those results.
And we've talked about it on some of the previous podcasts. In order to be able to measure that volume of information now and to be able to report on it, we can't do that manually because we'd end up having rooms just filled with people processing administrative information on a paper-based process. That's not reality. No. We're not there yet. We're not there at all. We've moved well.
We don't have. I mean, if you think about the macroeconomic challenges of construction, where urbanization is only going up. Yeah. So that means we need to build more. Yeah. In now a way which is sustainable, which we've never had to think about before, with less labor. Yeah. So that's one of the really fascinating things that we're talking about all of the time, which is we don't even have the people. The people that we have don't even have the skills. Yeah. We can't even attract new people with those skills.
Was it you that mentioned the metric when we were chatting in DCW that for every 7 that are leaving the industry, 1 comes into the industry?
It wasn't me. It wasn't me, but that's a horrifying statistic.
Yeah, it was around the same day then. So for every 7 that leave our industry, we're only attracting 1 replacement.
Is that all of construction? Or
that's all of construction.
That's all of construction.
Yeah, that includes the trades and as well.
I mean, that's not a surprise. I mean, if you look at the average age of especially the trades, if you look at the average age of trades, I mean, that's only going up. Yeah. I know that in the US last year, according to the American Association of General Contractors, they needed 700,000 new people in the industry to kind of fill the gap. Yeah. They only got 50% of that, 350. Yeah. So they had 350,000 unfilled positions last year, which is that's just an insane amount.
Yeah. And it's getting exponentially worse now, you know. Yeah, that's the reality. Construction isn't attractive anymore for the younger generation. The work is too hard in reality. And so in order for us to do more with less, we have to look at new ways of working, which digitization will help to a certain degree.
Well, even the, like, anecdotally, we do I take a big part of the AEC hackathons here in Blocks Hub here in Copenhagen. And we really struggle to get the computer science graduates in. Yeah. So this is non-construction people. Yeah. Computer science graduates who want to go in and doing back end and front end. And they're attracted instantly to kind of like health tech, gaming, fintech, all those sorts of kind of things. And they've never, we get some of them in, they have the weekend with us and they're like, we've never considered moving into construction technology. Yeah. But oh my God, do you need us? Yeah. And it's fun because there's so much to solve.
It's a blank page, really.
But no one really even considers it. It's just not bad.
Because it's not attractive. The marketing isn't there for it. Like, people look at kind of the health tech industry and the fintech as something that will it benefit them if they go into it? If we can solve some of the healthcare issues that will benefit me when I'm older, why wouldn't I invest my time in that? But what people don't realize is that you're more connected with construction than you are with healthcare. Because if you're healthy, you don't need healthcare. With construction, you're in a building, you're using infrastructure every single moment of your entire life.
And it's one of those only industries as well where we're just selling construction here on the podcast. But it's one of those industries, few industries as well, that you can walk around town if you retire, and you can say to your children and grandchildren, I worked on that. Yeah, I did that. Yeah, I helped with that. Yeah, there are not many kind of industries in the world where you can kind of say that. Yeah, and I think that's very cool. Yeah, and it's a reason that I'm still. I mean, I trained as an architect. In my education, I haven't touched, a science system for a long time. But I'm still in the industry because I think like you can have these impacts on the world, and it's fascinating. That's all. Yeah, we need more people.
There's a marketing issue then. There's a marketing issue within our industry to be able to attract to people, not just to trades and so on, but just, as you say, cross-pollination from other industries. People you might not normally see with our industry to attract them in. It's an interesting point.
And looping back to Zero, going back to your original question, I mean, the marketing, we do everything ourselves. And we're a complete voluntary org. And we've on purposely tried to make our branding and our marketing really quite punchy and different. I mean, it's bright pink and bright, lime green for the future leaders, and it's really impactful, kind of bright blue font. We use like 1980s retro computer graphics in our presentations. Just make it look different. I mean, we're a community that is also trying to attract people into an industry or keep people in it. That's the other thing. Like, guys, there is a route, there is a really cool community that you can work with to kind of help you solve these problems. And one thing that we really do find, talking about kind of future leaders, is that they have this huge want. They know that construction is a pretty dirty industry. Yeah. And they look at it and they're like, well, if I'm going to spend my life in this industry, it can't be dirty by the time I leave it. Yeah. They have that passion to go, guys, we're going to change this. Yeah. And I'm still young enough to be like, by the time it's 2050, I won't be retired yet. Yeah, so it's also my working.
God, hopefully I'm retired by 2050, but who remains to be seen.
I don't know. I don't think you will be. I think you'll still be going.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah. But that leads nicely into then reaching 2050 as the standards and the goals we're now setting and legislatively setting for us as an industry to achieve. there's big debates going on in some of the governmental organizations in Ireland, for example, public authorities, about the targets that we need to achieve. Like 2030, from our perspective, is gone, I'm afraid. We're not reaching 2030. That's gone.
I agree.
And so the bigger question becomes, are we in a position to actually be capable of reaching 2050 when we talk about these goals that we are setting? And the way you mentioned a minute ago, how slow our industry is moving currently, that is going to, we will need to ramp up exponentially over the next 2 decades in order for us to be able to remotely achieve those targets.
I mean, I think it's a multifaceted problem. I mean, there's not if there was a singular thing that we could do, it would be great. But so let's start with the labor challenge and not getting enough people in. The only gap to fill labor is tech.
Yeah.
So tech needs to step in. And we have some amazing technology, and more technology is being produced all of the time, right? So if we're lacking people, we have to shift to technology. That's the only investment, but that requires investment and that willingness to invest. So that's one. I think one of the biggest ones, or one of the easiest ways potentially we could get close to 2030 is forgetting all the new material stuff for a moment, which we'll touch upon. And part of my day job is kind of thinking about, well, how productive is construction?
Yeah.
And if I've got a scary statistic. So according to the Australian government, the labor productivity of construction since the introduction of BIM in the mainstream in 2010 has actually fallen by 15%.
Which is a bit,
so they're 15% less productive in construction in Australia. Which is bizarre. Yeah. And I saw it and I was like, and I haven't found another source, but it is from the Australian government. So okay, in the UK they've only increased productivity by 5%.
Yeah.
So I say, okay, well, why is that? Like what's really holding us back? And it's the collaborative part of the construction. So there's a lot of companies and a lot of people talk about this when we think about how much waste comes off of site and just how much time, money, and physical waste that we do. And at the end of the day, like clients right now, governments, private sector, all they want is a building on time, on budget, and to the quality that they kind of set to pay for. Yeah. And construction does amazing things. Like we build stuff from nothing to something. Yeah. But we've kind of failed a lot on these things. Yeah. And there's kind of, I call it kind of fag packet or kind of napkin math around it. Where they're saying, well, if you solve your time and your waste, you can actually reduce CO2, global CO2 emissions by around 2%. Yeah. Just by that. Not making mistakes, delivering stuff on time. It's that inefficiency. But it's like that because like on average, you've got 13 companies on site at any one time. Yeah. You know, a material has to move around the site 7 times before it's installed. So it gets broken, gets lost. Yeah. You know, someone takes it home. You know. Crazy. It's a very complex industry. Yeah. And so like, I know people going, oh, we can move to offsite and pre-manufacturing. Like, absolutely you can, but still every single project is unique because the site's unique. Yeah. And therefore you're going to have this complexity.
There's certain typologies that off-site manufacturing or MMC, modern methods of construction, will facilitate, like housing, hotel, hospital, the bed units in hospitals, et cetera, absolutely we'll be able to do it. But there's some unique capital projects where we won't be able to go fully off-site on. And, you know, but I think there's a place for all solutions. I think there isn't a one solution is going to fix all our problems. I think it's an amalgamation of all solutions working efficiently. We will see huge impacts in our industry, both from a sustainability perspective, but efficiency, cost, time, quality, all of that kind of stuff.
If we stop doing stupid stuff, we'd probably get about 30% over the way there. Yeah. And I mean that in the most politest of ways, of course. Yeah. The other part is then you look at like the materials part, the supply chain. Yeah. I mean, you've got to basically restructure an entire supply chain with new materials. Yeah. And just like I was speaking to a couple of people running projects in London currently, and the client was like, I want to use low carbon concrete. Yeah. I want to use that. I've got sign off, so insurance, got sign off from the insurance guys, money people. It's like, cool. But that will delay your project by 14 months. Yeah. Because the supply chain's not
there yet
at that volume. Yeah. And it's like SSAB in Sweden going, oh, we can create low carbon to near zero carbon steel. Okay, cool. But how much can you produce? It's one foundry.
Just one. Yeah.
So it's great. It's fantastic. But this stuff will take a decade or so to ramp.
That's the reality.
So how do you invest, or how do governments invest into making that happen faster? I don't have the answer to that, really.
I think you need to do it all at the same time. Yeah. Everything needs to be moving in that same direction, using alternative solutions, setting up the supply chains to provide greener alternatives, whether it's steel or concrete. The steel and concrete thing will, because of the volumetrics, will help our industry greatly. But I think the efficiency part is surely something we can solve. Like, that's decision making, we have planning and so on. Surely we can solve that before we start looking at alternative materials and so on. But as I say, we need to be doing it all right now.
Everything needs to be done.
As well as trying to attract new people into the industry, upskilling the current industry. Like, it's really so much that is changing and happening right now and over the next number of years. Unprecedented, I would say. Well,
it's also because I think the industry does get a pretty bad rap. I mean, it's very negative. I mean, if you just watch mainstream news, it's kind of like project delayed, project over budget. Yeah. Interestingly, though, no one on the news talks about how bad construction is in terms of global warming, though, compared to like aviation or fashion or those other industries. I think the real interesting change, one of the big, I think, we talk about 2050. What we're starting to see, and it's actually an area which surprisingly a lot of people don't really think about, is the finance part. Like, and I'm not a finance guy, but what we know is that big pension funds, the people that borrow the money, loan the money, out to buildings so they can be built, they all of a sudden now have this ESG, these green, these clean requirements, especially the pension funds. Yeah. Because the people who are having their pensions, like myself, will go into my pension fund and clean it. As soon as that money starts going, it needs to be greener. And that's the push, because now there's no choice. As an industry, we have to. If we can't achieve that, we're not even going to get the building off of the ground.
No, exactly.
So I'm starting to see a lot more of that. And that's
it's interesting you mentioned, we were talking about it in a presentation we were given at a conference last week in Dublin, and saying what were the biggest impacts between now and 2030. And one of ours we were discussing was green financing. Yeah. The reality is that because of the ESG reporting, as you say, the companies at the top financing the entire industry are going to need to invest in green buildings, because of the simple fact it's now their supply chain. In the similar sense where contractors and the suppliers were going to be looking at green material, because that's going to affect the requirements that they need to deliver upon within these greener buildings. So the entire supply chain from the top down is going to be affected. And it's maybe the first time where we're going to see a top-down approach to this rather than a bottom-up. If we were to wait for the bottom-up, it might never happen. So it needs to be the top-down, and money talks at the end of the day, doesn't it?
This is the stick incentive, right? And this goes back to what we were discussing earlier as well, which is if we're being asked to do these things, we also now have to evidence it, that it's been achieved, which means now we have to go and measure stuff, which means we need data, which means we need tech, which means we need skills.
And skills,
So it trickles through pretty quickly, because people will start bidding for these contracts.
Exactly. Yeah.
And then, the requirement be, okay, you need to prove that you've achieved, X kilograms per square meter, whatever that target is that's been set. Yeah. People bidding will look at that and go, how do I do that?
What's my strategy here?
Where do I start? And this is where zero comes in, right? As a community, we have people doing this today, and we have people who are not doing this today. And us as a community are going, well, okay, go and speak to that person. These people are really good with tech. Like, it's that kind of wayfinding, arrow finding kind of group.
And the thing about the sustainability aspect, it's the one area where every single stakeholder group is going to be affected.
Yeah.
Everybody will need someone in their organization to be able to talk about, manage, strategize, deliver on their proportion of this, because no one is going to be able to step back and say, oh, this is not my responsibility. The reality is that from the client right through the stakeholder group, right through the supply chain, everybody is going to have to deliver something of information.
Even the simplest thing of electrician on site saying, I've installed that light fitting.
Yeah.
has to now be done because we have to time check everything. We have to go, well, is it the thing we asked you to install? Yeah. Because we've carbon counted that light.
That EPD for that particular light fitting.
So it all goes through. It's just the simplest of that. Yeah. Multiply that by the thousands, tens of millions of checks that you have to do now.
Yeah.
It's
a bit serious.
It's serious, but at the same time, it's exciting because it is a big challenge to solve. And I mean, you work in this kind of field as well. And we're going to see a very fast change, not very fast because it's still construction. A fast change. Yeah. Because now we have this huge catalyst.
Yeah. And right now we can see that all public listed companies, and this includes investment funds or whatever, now need to report on their ESG next year, on their 2024 return, if you like. So what's that going to look like as all companies are brought into the system? It's going to be super interesting to see how quickly an industry can change because of a requirement. Again, if we were left up to our own devices, we probably would have been, I'm not going to do that. I'm going to wait and see if another company does it, or wait and see if actually it's even going to be required. Like I would argue BIM level 2 in the UK was the same kind of outcome. Standards were set. They weren't really enforceable. It was a kind of a suggestive approach to it. And people went, let's see if someone takes it up before I take that first step. Whereas now we're seeing companies have to, from a legal perspective, to report in this way. So the impact here is going to be super interesting, and the outcome. But as you're talking, it brings me back to an interesting point about attracting people into the industry. Today, what are we doing to attract students, young students graduating high school, looking to go to university, or maybe not even go to university, just to enter a profession? Are we doing anything? Have you seen anything to attract young people other than, TikTok adverts and universities saying, come join us, we're great?
I think, so I have, and I'll give some really good examples, but I think just because you mentioned TikTok there, and someone was asking me the other day, like, who's the influencer in construction? This social, and I was like, I don't think we have one.
Yeah.
Like, and again, the industry is so huge, so broad, so diverse, and so split.
And so fragmented,
It's so fragmented. That's the first thing. Yeah. How do you just reach people? Yeah. The UN estimates that there's around 275 million people right now working construction. Yeah. It's a lot of people. It's 8% of total global workforce.
Yeah.
Right. So that's your first challenge. The second one is that I think that the education coming out of universities, even if they get to universities, the education is not up to scratch, which is what is happening. I'm very fortunate enough to guest lecture at a number of universities. Yeah. And I just say how it is. Like, this is how the industry is. This is what's going to happen. And this is the tech you're going to have to use. If you don't know these things, you can kiss that career goodbye. Like, these are the things you need to know. And these are things that are not being taught.
Yeah. So in relation to education, and being looking very closely at our specialization as cost manager quantity surveyors, we've been having these conversations with universities. When you look at their curriculum, some of the universities are teaching the same curriculum to quantity surveyors coming out of university today as I was taught 20-something years ago. That can't be right. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. If we're teaching in the same way 20 years ago, the same information.
Yeah, that's just... the RIBA, the Royal Institute of British Architects, for the first time updated the official education guidance, I think 2 or 3 years ago, and that was the first time in 20 years. But on a positive note, because there are some positive stories. Yeah. So at Zero Construct, we work with an organization, another not-for-profit called Class of Your Own. It's run by a lady called Alison Watson out of the UK. And she works across the UK, across the Middle East, and a few other countries. And she runs this thing called DEC, so Design, Engineer, and Construct. And what she's done with help of funding and kind of investments is create a course, a teachable course for 16 to 18-year-olds to get them interested in construction. And it's all construction. It's just making them understand about construction. So they have like 120 schools on this curriculum. And we've partnered with them, and we kind of help teach the teachers about the sustainability part. So she's gone, can you run lectures, to teach the teachers to teach the students about sustainability. Because at 16, the reports back from the teachers on the ground and from Alison's group is that the kids want to know about sustainability. They want to know about decarbonization in an industry they don't really know much about.
Yeah.
So we at Zero Construct we made a top trumps card game around decarbonization, which was, we designed it for boardrooms.
Yeah.
So the design was give this to your design team or construction team, turn your phones off, play around and learn a little bit about how to decarbonize construction. But we've got some funding to send around 400 decks out to students, and some of them have AR and stuff. It's just a more fun way to learn something extremely important. So I think that's a really good example of things that are being done. I wish that organizations like governments or European governments, even at UN level, just go, here's 10 million euros, go, let's spread this out.
Even the RICS, the Royal Institute of Chartered Surveyors, from a QS perspective, they talk about innovation and so on, and they're directly linked to the curriculum that is educated within universities in the UK, for example, and they need to be leading the way. And when we talk to organizations like that, they're saying, we teach BIM. So, but how are you teaching it? Let's have a look. We have a BIM module. So it's not a module. It's
life.
It's transitions across everything you're teaching. From contract, from a QS, again, bias perspective here, across your contracts, procurement, everything. It should be not a module, but ingrained in what you're teaching under your traditional.
It's because people still
sets.
see it as a technology, and it's not.
It's not.
It's a process and workflow, and that's because we shouldn't have called it modeling.
No,
we should have called it management.
Yeah,
building information management.
Exactly,
as a process. Like as soon as modeling came into it, people were like, oh, okay, so you use software. It's like, oh, yes, but no.
Yeah, and the first component of BIM was the 3D model, and so I was marketed slightly wrong, and it's now confused everybody and everything, you know.
But it was the fancy term of the time, right? And you can't blame really tech companies for jumping on it. No. Same as digital twins, smart cities, AI. Everything's AI now. Like of course, marketing departments of tech companies are going to jump on it to sell their stuff. Of course they are.
No, well, that's just the hot topic at the moment, I guess. So if we move on to our next topic, subtopic then. So one of the challenges that we're seeing is the greenwashing component. Over the last 5, 6, 7 years, like every company has come on sustainability and what they want to do, and green buildings this and green buildings that, and we're the leaders when it comes to sustainability. But there's a little bit happening within government now, where they're beginning to fine companies if they are greenwashing. You see it a lot in other industries like the apparel industry, the fashion industry. You know, we all see and can see from YouTube and the clips online about how great or not great it is. But the same thing is happening in construction as well. What have you experienced within Zero and the?
So this is really well timed, because actually our own podcast, Zero Carbon Construction, we did an episode a couple of weeks ago on this exact topic. Yeah. So someone went to an innovation show in London, and it was just awful. Like, really? They posted, basically this gentleman posted a picture on LinkedIn, his ticket torn in half.
Oh yeah,
a long sentence. That. Yeah. So we grabbed him and interviewed him. Yeah. And was like, okay, why is this happening? I think in construction right now, you can basically get away with greenwashing because it goes back to what we've been discussing. Where's the checks and balances, the accountability, and the measurement? Yeah. Right. In other industries, apparel is a good one. They've been are measuring kind of like the amount of wastewater and kind of the amount of materials you use, kind of treatment of people as well. Like labor, let's not forget that like sustainability is not just about carbon, it's also about people and welfare.
That's your S there, you know, in your ESG. Yeah.
So I think in construction, I think right now people can basically get away with it. Oh, this building is zero carbon. Yeah. It's like, but you knocked down a building. Yeah. So what happened to the building you knocked down? And what happened to all that embodied carbon? Yeah. Did you just stick it in the bin? Yeah. Because I'm pretty sure your zero carbon building, that means that your new building that you've just built has to have negative carbon.
Negative carbon. And it has to be there. What's its end of life? So what happens at the end of this? So does everything have here be recycled and repurposed and reused? Doubted very much, because certain components there has to be a waste factor. So
absolutely. So
zero carbon.
Yeah. So right now, I think anybody claiming kind of a zero carbon building, I straight away look at it and just go, I don't understand what that even means.
Yeah.
I mean, we know for a fact that there's like 140 different definitions of what zero carbon even means globally in terms of measuring, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
So, but the problem is that there's two ways that you can look at it. You could look at it from the greenwashing perspective, which is just like, well, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
And you can go and pick it apart and question it. The other way to look at it is go, okay, you've tried to do something, and you've tried to make it as sustainable as possible.
Yeah.
So 2 massive thumbs up.
Well done, yeah.
But let's not exaggerate where we are and call it zero carbon.
Yeah.
So let's take that little bit of greenwashing element away from it,
yeah,
and actually celebrate what you have achieved if we measure it in a sensible way.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that it just kind of muddies the kind of the terminology, and you get this, even the word sustainability as a word of meaning.
Yeah.
I mean, others
becomes diluted.
It becomes diluted. I mean, and literal dilution. I was on a plane, not very sustainable, sorry, on a plane the other day, and on the back of the in-flight menu was sustainable sips. Yeah. I thought, oh, for God's sake, like it just completely devalues the word, right? So I think we also need to be braver and stand up and as an industry together, and we do it as part of Zero in the politest way possible.
Yeah.
And go, no,
yeah,
that's not. How can that be zero carbon? It's just it's not possible.
There's two aspects to it. I think, as you mentioned, giving the thumbs up and looking at the positivity is one thing. Maybe part of the promotion of that particular organization and building, etc., wasn't really understood, and net zero maybe within the calculations that and the strategy they approached, they have achieved that. Like, for example, when we consider Denmark and the calculation of LCA, we don't take it into account end of life here and certain components within this the B calculation, which I believe fair enough. That's the strategy we have right now, but it's going to come where it's whole life cycle carbon that we're looking at here, and it's a starting point. But I do agree that we have to put our hand up and then call companies out, or even query and question how they came to their understanding that it's net zero, and having that strategy. You can see it in the industry. A lot of companies have this net zero by 2030 strategy. What's your baseline? Where are you starting from? What is your real impact? One of the conferences we were at a while back, a company was talking about, how they're improving their systems. They're going alternative fuel vehicles, for example. And I put my hand up and I asked him, well, what about your built assets? Have you calculated your built assets? What about your future expansion? What about your future retrofit? Have you looked at that? And he said, no, we haven't touched that yet. That's a little bit complicated. I said, well, changing out some of your vehicles for alternative fuels, I think that's a bit of greenwashing. Again, two thumbs up for doing it.
Better than nothing.
Yeah, but the big picture stuff is completely different to what this looks like.
But I think the issue is that the big picture is so complicated, and not enough people really
understand it.
Really, because it is complicated.
Yeah.
We went through a process in Zero for a short time where there was a lot of finger pointing as a community, and we realized very, very quickly that's not very helpful.
No.
The purpose really is, as a community, and I think as an industry, is as you just said. Okay, so you've done that thing, that's good. What are you going to do next? And this goes back to the roadmap thing. Like, you've got this big target, 2030, 2050, whenever it is. The reason those targets are down there is because we know it's going to take a while.
Yeah.
So claiming already now in 2024, 2023 that you're already at zero carbon, it's kind of like going, oh, well, cool, well done. So no changes for you over the next few years then.
Yeah.
It's like, no, but there are so many steps you need to take. So if you change your vehicles, fantastic, great. What's the next thing you can do? And the next, and the next, and the next. And it's those little kind of things along the way. I think the other big challenge as well, and we were talking about this at DCW again as well. And again, this is not to point fingers, but if you look at the green building standards we have, the big global ones like BREEAM and LEED, the platinum level, the highest score you can get, still a carbon producing building.
Yeah. That's right.
They had a great catalyst at making the industry think about carbon.
Yeah.
So they did exactly what they were supposed to do. But maybe we should look at it and go, do you know what? The highest level should be almost impossible to achieve right now, which could be negative carbon, let's say.
Yeah.
I don't even know how that would be possible necessarily for a building, but really putting in some really robust, really ambitious targets for an industry and going, that's where you need to go. It's not possible today.
Yeah.
How are you going to get there?
Yeah, we've spoken a bit about this in on the podcast with Roger and so on about the green certifications, that in reality they haven't caught up yet now to the quickly moving requirements on sustainability. They're playing catch up dramatically here now, and carbon's becoming the main focus point. And in some of the certifications, all you need to do is produce a carbon calculation to get your points.
Yeah,
you don't have to have a target. You just need to produce a calculation. And that's really not where the industry is anymore. But tell me, if you had advice for anybody on two aspects, wanting to connect with Zero, want to becoming part of the community, how would they do that? And then secondly, from a sustainability perspective in the industry, maybe our young listeners out there going, do you know what, I'm really interested in sustainability. Where should I start? So start with the Zero, I guess, first.
So I think, the Zero Construct community, it's free to join. Website, zeroconstruct.com. Just come on, you'll get invited to Discord and WhatsApp. We have loads of different ways. Or just listen to podcasts like this one or our own. I mean, it's getting that community and finding like-minded people. Nobody in our community is sitting there and going, I've solved it.
Yeah.
And we have some incredibly smart people with doctorates in all sorts of amazing stuff.
Yeah.
You've got me who pretends to know stuff, who doesn't really know much.
Yeah.
But also for me, learning, right? So, I mean, I'm part of that community because I want to learn more. I don't have any professional education in sustainability. My learning is through speaking to experts and picking out the important stuff and going, oh, that's really interesting. That's really, really interesting.
And I think that's an important point, actually, is that you don't need to be a certified expert in sustainability to want to learn or to need to learn the basics of sustainability requirements, whether that's, the need for calculation of LCA, what is whole life cycle carbon, what are certifications when it comes to building, what is a sustainable process, et cetera, et cetera. You don't need to be the expert, but you need to understand at least the general information in order to be able to carry the conversation in the future.
You need to know those starting points, and really the work that we do is kind of like people just get invited to online workshops. We do live broadcasting with experts, and people can ask questions. You've got the WhatsApp and Discord groups where people are just talking, and we're sharing kind of experience, and that's really the purpose. And the workshops are great because we get a real mix of people come in who people love talking, people love sharing their experiences. People also love listening in those environments, and it's quite okay. You can come in. You can just say hello. Don't even have to say it. You can type hello if you're a bit introvert. And you can just sit and listen to people discuss, and then maybe you get the confidence to start asking questions later. Like it doesn't matter to us at all, like how much you get involved.
So then for our young people listening, want to get into sustainability, understand it a bit, they can also be members of Zero.
100%. And we've got that extra part, that Zero Next part, which is the Future Leader. They have their own space. They're part of the space for everybody, but they also have their own space where they can discuss whatever they want to discuss. They have their own manifesto that they've written, which is publicly available on our website, and they update that every so often. And there is nobody in there that's not amazing.
Excellent.
And we promote them, we bring them with us, we put them on stage, those who are interested, because I think they have that, as I get older, I'm getting more and more cynical. Right. And, also there's things I wish I could say, which I probably can't say in a language that I want to say necessarily. But those people don't have those filters or that cynicism yet. And you can put them in front of a bunch of like C-suite people and they just go, it's going on. And it's great. Because they don't have that risk factor yet in their professional careers. And they can and they can do those things. So it works really, really well.
You mentioned there a few minutes ago that you guys also have a podcast series. What's that called?
Zero
Matthew?
Carbon Construction.
Excellent. And you can find that podcast on
Spotify, Apple, Amazon, Google. I hear is just closed. So yeah. Anyway,
check it out, everybody. But Matthew, thank you very much for your time today. It was a pleasure to have you on. Thank you all for listening. Bye.
Ciao.
Thanks very much for listening. There's a LinkedIn link below in the show notes. We would love to connect with you.
We hope you enjoyed it and have you with us in the next one. Thank you very much.